By Taylor Telford, September 6 at 7:41 a.m. It was a metaphoric Molotov, a middle finger, a knife in the back. Naturally, it emerged from the deep throat ether just before 4 p.m., smack in the middle of the work week. Even in the midst of a presidency and news cycle that powers a ceaseless hamster wheel of drama, the New York Times op-ed from an anonymous senior official in the Trump administration was jaw-dropping. The unidentified author declared that he or she is part of the resistance against the president, working diligently from within to frustrate parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations. The piece slammed Trump for his inadequacies and volatility, and declared him a danger to the country. But lucky for us, the author said, there's a group of honorable subversives trying to keep him at bay. Top appointees are thwarting Trump, says senior official in administration in New York Times opinion piece, but the explosion the piece created wasn't really about the what, it was mostly about the who. It was also about the spectacle, the joy of the adrenaline-fueled race. It was the starting whistle setting off another remarkable round of Washington's unofficial sport, speculative gossip. Internet conspiracy theorists cracked their knuckles and settled in for a long night's work. Pundits sat by their phones and in front of TV cameras, waiting for their chances to weigh in. Ravenous masses took to Twitter and Reddit to tear into the piece's breadcrumbs. The game was afoot. An amazing thing about this op-ed is not that someone wrote it, but how many people in the administration plausibly could have written it. Zeke Miller, at Zekage Miller, September 6, 2018. The avalanche of gases engulfed just about everyone in the top tiers of the White House: Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Advisor Kellyanne Conway, Chief of Staff John F. Kelly. Some were sure it would be a big name, others were positive it would be a powerful nobody. CNN's Chris Cillizza threw together a list of 12 possible authors, including Chovanka and the First Lady. Even others wondered whether Trump and his allies had plotted and penned the op-ed themselves to feed the fires of internal controversy and distract from Supreme Court nominee Brett M. Kavanaugh's hearings and the revelations of Bob Woodward's fear, which offered examples of staffers sabotaging the president in myriad ways as the administration teetered toward breakdown. All the while, the bets literally rolled in. Who will be revealed as the writer of the anonymous Ed Nittam's op-ed essay? Mike Pence 150, Betsy Davis plus 200, Mike Pompeo plus 400, Stephen Mnuchin plus 400, Jim Mattis plus 500, Jeff Sessions plus 500, Ivanka Trump 12-1, Jared Kushner at 12-1, Stephen Miller 15-1. Complete odds at https://t COVCYLPZRN7xpic.twitter.com 5YBY2QPH4Y, OddsShark, at OddsShark, September 5, 2018. Some zeroed in on Vice President Pence as the mystery author, primarily because of the use of the word lodestar in the op-ed. Gung-ho sleuths trace the word through numerous Pence speeches, dating back to 2001. The Ed Nittams just published an anonymous op-ed from a senior administration official. I'd like to posit a guess as to who wrote it. Getting my Ada Schleifenberg began with a single word that jumped out at me. https://t.co/ajs2j8wh2dan download star bloom at DANBL00M, September 5, 2018. Or maybe it was Pence's speechwriter, some pondered. Or maybe it was a last act of defiance from John McCain, another on-the-record Lodestar user. But surely, others noted, the author would have known people would try to follow the money words, so maybe somebody was trying to set Pence up, or was simply throwing sleuths off their scent. Who the heck knows? Thursday morning, as Lodestar trended on digital dictionaries and across social media, the vice president's aides definitively denied that Pence had authored the Times op-ed. "Our office is above such amateur acts," Pence's communications director, Gerard Adjen, wrote on Twitter. Nixon had deep throat, Trump has Lodestar, and archaic word becomes a resistance. #Trump attacked the op-ed and its publisher in his Wednesday afternoon meeting with the press pool, calling it gutless. "We have somebody in what I call the failing New York Times that's talking about he's part of the resistance inside the Trump administration," Trump told reporters. "This is what we have to deal with. And you know the dishonest media ... but it's really a disgrace." Afterward, the president tweeted a single word: treason? Does the so-called senior administration official really exist, or is it just the failing New York Times with another phony source? If the gutless anonymous person does indeed exist, the Times must, for national security purposes, turn him or her over to government at once. Donald J. Trump, at @RealDonaldTrump, September 5, 2018. In a fiery statement, Sanders declared the piece a new low, demanded an apology from the Times, and called for the author's resignation from the administration. "He is not putting country first, but putting himself and his ego ahead of the will of the American people," the White House spokeswoman said. "The coward should do the right thing and resign." Paranoia blossomed behind closed doors in the White House, according to a Washington Post report, as aides and staffers engaged in a fevered real-life game of Guess Who, as they tried to nail down the op-ed's author. The column, which published mid-afternoon Wednesday, sent tremors through the West Wing and launched a frantic guessing game, the Post's Philip Rucker, Ashley Parker and Josh Dawsey wrote. Startled aides cancelled meetings and huddled behind closed doors to strategize a response. Aides were analyzing language patterns to try to discern the author's identity, or at a minimum the part of the administration where the author works. The sleeper cells have awoken, Trump and aides shaken by resistance op-ed. The Wall Street Journal reported that some White House aides even called journalists to ask who was responsible for the anonymous Times op-ed. Although a note at the top of the piece said the author's identity was known to the Times opinion staff, those privy stay tight-lipped, apparently bound to protect the official's anonymity, despite outcry from some of the paper's own reporters. So basically, Times reporters now must try to unearth the identity of an author that our colleagues in opinion have sworn to protect with anonymity. https://t COWJ2NKMDHC9, Joe DeCanter, at Joe DeCanter, September 5, 2018. But in an interview with CNN, a Times op-ed page editor, Jim Dow, revealed that the source had reached out to the paper through a go-between, offering to unveil, well, sort of, the resistance within the administration to the world. Dow didn't say how the Times communicated with the author, or elaborate on exactly how senior the person is, CNN reported. Times editorial page editor James Bennett told the Post's Paul Farhi that the newspaper would not have been able to publish the op-ed if it had not granted anonymity to the author. "We thought it was an important perspective to get out," he told the Post. "Our preference is not to publish anonymously, and we seldom do it. The question is, do we think the piece was important enough to make an exception? We feel strongly that it was. Veteran Washingtonians compared the storm of speculation to the one that surrounded Primary Colors, a novel published by Anonymous that was heavily based on Bill Clinton's 1992 presidential campaign. Experts used linguistic analysis to try to match the prose to a known author. The man behind the book, political columnist Joe Klein, came forward after the Post published handwriting samples from an early manuscript. Critics called Klein's anonymity a stunt, a means of drumming up drama to sell books, while exaggerating his insider knowledge. Thursday, as the op-ed speculation continued, Politico Playbook noted that the Washington parlor game of guessing who wrote the op-ed is at an all-time high. Everyone around town is buzzing about who it might be. The question dominated cable news. The author will be revealed